When I was out shopping the other day, I saw a pair of these in the window of a store, and my first thought was, oh god, please don't bring those back. I'm sure this is an interaction that many people experience throughout their lives. You're just minding your own business and then one day, boom, everyone's wearing Crocs again. It's like the trend somehow became so uncool that it looped back around. But while there are many fashion trends that somehow manage to get their zombie resurrection, there are others that should definitely be left in the past. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Historidame, and today, we're taking a look at more of the weirdest fashion trends throughout history. When radium was first discovered in the late 1800s, there was a lot of hype around it from the general public. This spurred an explosion of new radium-based products to hit store shelves. There were razors, energy drinks, glow-in-the-dark stopwatches, and even a bizarre line of cosmetics that one might say were radiating potential. That's right, during the first few decades of the 20th century, it was not unheard of for women to use beauty products that actually contained radioactive elements. One of the first of these was released in 1911 by Helen Cavendish, known as Radium. This was an array of face and hair care products that promised to keep you young by removing grays and stimulating natural hair growth. All you had to do was smear a little radium on your problem area, and you were good to go. Another notable product was Radia, a face cream launched in 1933 that contained a combination of both thorium and radium, hence the name. This cream promised to smooth out wrinkles and prevent any unwanted blemishes on the skin, leaving you with a glowing, youthful complexion. If only they knew just how glowing they would be. Unfortunately for those who purchased these products, however, they were not actually unlocking the secret to anti-aging. They were just dosing themselves with tiny amounts of radiation. Even still, both Radium and Radia were highly successful. But of course we have to wonder, why would people willingly put a radioactive element on their body in the first place? Well, during the early 1900s, science didn't really understand how the whole radioactivity thing worked yet. But we did know that this fantastic new element was filled with energy. Scientists at the time theorized that elements like radium might be the key to curing disease and building stronger bodies. It wouldn't actually be seen as dangerous until the long-term effects of radiation started to appear. Basically, companies just took a good marketing idea and ran with it. But despite the onslaught of these radioactive products, there is very little evidence that any seriously harmed the general public, aside from a couple of unique cases. For the most part, radiation was just a gimmick. Some products even straight up lied about containing any at all, and ones like Radia had such small amounts that they weren't really dangerous anyway. Regardless, the ingredient was removed from the skincare line once the dangers of it were better understood. The 1800s are known for having various cultural movements throughout the decades that would influence both entertainment and fashion. There was the rise of the spiritualism movement, and a fascination for the dead. More fans of ancient Egypt than you can count. And of course, a newfound public interest in science and the natural world. This naturalist movement in particular would result in a few fashion trends that were incredibly bizarre. From fern-patterned dresses to hats piled high with taxidermied animals, the Victorians were determined to recreate nature right on their person. But for some 19th century fashionistas, a recreation alone was not enough. They wanted to wear something that would bring their outfit to life. Literally. Enter the 1880s and the trend of living jewelry. Now, by this point, naturalist fashion was already going strong. Accessories like insect-shaped brooches had become a much sought-after statement piece. But those who wanted to go all out also had no problems wearing a living creature as though it was an expensive piece of jewelry. Some women would wear live beetles on their person, attaching them through gold chains or tiny jewel-encrusted cages. Others just sewed the creature right into their garment. In their 1881 article, Animals and Jewelry, the New York Sun even reported that at some formal events, there were cases of women putting live fireflies in their hair to get a glowing effect. But perhaps the most notable case is that of famous socialite Lily Langtry, who, not having much jewelry of her own, attended the Marlborough House ball wearing a costume that contained real butterflies trapped in a layer of gold netting on her skirt. Now, if you aren't a fan of the creepy crawlies, this trend probably wouldn't have been for you. There were even many at the time who criticized the unique style, considering it to be rightfully horrifying. In the 1882 issue of the series Art in Dress, one column featured a concerned writer who expressed her distaste for the trend. She recounted her experience of witnessing a woman with a beetle on one of her shoulders, writing of the event that she wanted to brush it away, only to be horrified when she discovered that it was sewn into the woman's clothing. And there were many more who agreed with her. Not only did this trend step into the realm of animal cruelty, but just imagine those freaky little insect legs wiggling around on your neck. Ooh. Personally, I don't think I would mind the idea of bug-themed jewelry on its own, but when it comes to that of the living variety, it is an absolute no from me. You've heard of platform shoes. Now get ready for platform shoes 16th century edition. Known as Chopins, this freakishly tall footwear was all the rage with Spanish and Venetian aristocracy in the 1500s. But unlike other shoes, these ones weren't made for walking. The main purpose of wearing Chopins was actually to show off how rich you were. So how does being tall do that? Well, it depends on where you come from. Venetian women would wear Chopins underneath their dresses in order to extend the hemline of their skirt. Since clothing was expensive and time-consuming to make, it was an ideal way for the rich to distinguish themselves from the lower classes. By making their skirts longer, wealthy women could not only wear a more elaborate outfit, but also showcase to everyone that they could afford the excess fabric. Spanish women, on the other hand, wore shorter dresses that fell just below the ankle, allowing their shoes to be on full display. Chopins in this case would be used to demonstrate wealth opposite to how the Venetians did it, by dressing up the shoes themselves with luxurious materials, like embossed leatherwork, velvet, lace, and gemstones. The platformed nature of these shoes also allowed them to be more visually striking, and to of course draw more attention to a woman's economic status. Now you might be able to guess just by looking at them that these were not the most practical choice in footwear. Though some Chopins might be as short as 3 inches, more extreme cases could be taller than 20. Now that's just asking for a broken ankle. Women who wore them would often have to be carried in order to get around. Or if they wanted to walk themselves, they would require the assistance of at least 2 servants to complete the task. Now of course, as is the case for pretty much any fashion worn by women, there were plenty of men who mocked these shoes relentlessly. They declared Chopins to be ridiculous, and a waste of valuable materials. And they did have a point. But it was also kind of ironic, considering the fact that women wore them specifically to communicate their familial wealth, and thus make their male relatives look good. By 1430, even before the height of their popularity, Venetian lawmakers eventually became so sour about the existence of Chopins that they passed a law restricting the height of the shoes to only 3 inches. But this was widely ignored until the trend eventually fell out of fashion, sometime during the beginning of the 17th century. The 1920s are known for a number of trends that pushed the boundaries of fashion. In just the span of a few years, new styles pretty much turned the established beauty norms on their heads. The female silhouette went from the classic curve to the formless flapper dress. Long hair, once seen to be a woman's crowning glory, was now chopped off in favor of short bobs. And most horrifying of all, skirts were rising to reveal scandalous things, particularly a woman's knees. But 1920s trendsetters were not going to just allow this newly exposed body part to sit there doing nothing. The boldest among them wanted to draw even more attention to it, especially the younger generation, who, like any teenagers, were always looking for a way to shock their parents. Thus comes the little-known trend of knee painting. You see, these new shorter dresses were still a bit long compared to the modern-day standards. Usually the skirt would fall just below the knee, but doing certain activities like walking and especially dancing provided opportunity for fabric to ride up just enough to get a glimpse of those scandalous knees. Young women who were looking to make a statement began adding a bit of makeup to the area so that it would be more eye-catching when it was exposed. This eventually evolved into full-on art pieces, and women were soon decorating their knees with things like flowers, landscapes, and even detailed portraits. But of course, more conservative adults were not too thrilled to see the younger generation exposing such inappropriate body parts. There were many cases of parents scolding their children, and teenagers even receiving detention or getting kicked out of school for having painted knees. Sadly, this rebellious trend would die out by the time the Great Depression rolled around, and brought with it financial hardship and rationing. Knee painting did, however, experience a brief revival during the 1960s, when skirts once again got shorter, though it will always be best remembered in its original form, as a bold fashion trend that was a mark of the changing times. So which one of these fashion trends surprised you the most? Are there any that you would have tried? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to see more content like this, you can also subscribe to my channel, and keep up to date on all the fun history videos of the future. But for now, I bid you farewell.